Oh, we are halfway there, and a lot of us are still living on a prayer. All right, welcome into a new episode of the Zero Technique Football Podcast. I am your co-host, Ryan Stern. Joined with me, as always, is Derek Mountain. How you doing tonight, Derek?
You know, that might have been the corniest intro you've had yet, but
and I've had a lot of corny ones.
But I couldn't have said it better myself.
It's weird because at the beginning of the season, we were taking bets, or we were trying to throw out lines of how many games are we going to get through before there's some sort of shutdown. And even with all of the positive tests that there have been, I think that the players have done a pretty decent job at avoiding contracting this very contagious disease. And you got to applaud the NFL for being as cautious as they have been. But we will get into maybe are they becoming a little bit too lenient at a time where right now we're seeing another surge in cases. We're going to talk some midseason awards. I said we're halfway there because now we are officially halfway through the season for every team. So we're going to figure out who the MVP. We got some rookies of the year, both on offense and defense. And then we have our Week 9 takeaways and our Week 10 picks. So make sure you're checking out backsportspage.com. Got Derek's power rankings, plus all the other great content going up there. I've got the archives to all of the great podcasts and web shows that Backsports Page is putting out. Earlier today, you had Randy and Bill with the Hardwood Huddle. They do a great job breaking down basketball, so make sure you're checking that out if you are a big basketball fan. You got two of the better basketball minds that I know, and I mean, I know very little about the NBA. I follow college. The NBA is just not my game anymore. But you have two of the premier bits of knowledge for the NBA. So make sure you're checking them out. All right, so I led into it a little bit. The NFL is going through, I think, a little bit more of a lenient period. Earlier on in the season, training camp, first couple weeks, we saw that that a positive test would shut a facility down for multiple days. The entire teams would have to test negative for a couple days in order to get back into the workplace. Now we're starting to see these positive tests and close contacts, and we're seeing them shut down for the rest of that day. And if everyone else tests negative the next day, they're allowed to open back up. I guess we haven't really seen a big outbreak for a team over the past couple of weeks, which I guess is good. But we're really looking at a big surge in cases nationwide. So do you think that the leniency that we've seen over the past couple of weeks may come back and bite them in the butt when all is said and done?
Yeah, it seems like we're kind of getting desensitized to the news in the NFL and the real world, because I just think it's so taxing on our lives in general. To live like this is not natural. It goes against everything that we know. Like when we went through that rough patch in the beginning of the year, the NFL was very quick to pat themselves on the back, and they had done a great job getting through training camp. And I think it was the first 3 weeks, there were minimal to no cases, and we saw the Titans happen. And Then we saw Cam Newton and Stephon Gilmore happen, and all the rearrangement of the scheduling and the bye weeks for certain teams was being flip-flopped around, and it seemed inevitable that we would go to the Week 18, Week 19 schedule that the NFL would have to build in to make up some of these games, but that they continuously said that will be a last-ditch resort if we have to go there, but we do not want to go there, and we want to keep that in our back pocket for as long as we can. And they still haven't rearranged the schedule too much where we have a Week 18 or a Week 19 scheduled yet. But we still, like Ryan said, we still have a really long way to go. So I do get a little bit nervous. Like, I do think that was a wake-up call, especially the Titans. I think that was a big wake-up call around the league, but that was over a month ago. So does it kind of wear off? Do guys get a little more undisciplined? And now you have to worry about these teams that are out of contention. Like a team like the Jaguars, a perfect example. They're the youngest roster in football. Do they take their foot off the gas, be a little bit undisciplined? They bend the restrictions a little bit. They go out. They know that they're not playing playoff football. So you have to worry about teams like that, young guys, just staying disciplined and staying through the course, because it's a grind. And to live like this, it is a lot to ask.
Yeah, and it's crazy because we're starting to see games canceled in college football well ahead of time, because we're especially on college campuses where you have kids who are looking to not necessarily worry about COVID protocols, and everyone's going out and partying and drinking and being close to each other without taking the proper protocols into place. And we're seeing, I was really excited for Maryland, Ohio State. I know Maryland still, I mean,
last 2 weeks.
Yeah, right. No one's really expecting a whole lot out of Maryland, but they're still undefeated if my memory serves me correct.
They lost week 1 to Northwestern, but they bounced back the last 2 weeks, and they beat Minnesota in that Friday night game, and they just smoked Penn State. That they were 25-point underdogs, and they came in and they're up 35-0 in Happy Valley.
And for anyone that knows anything about Big Ten football, you don't just go into Happy Valley and destroy Penn State. It just doesn't happen. And that's what we saw. And they were poised to take on Ohio State. But now, again, it's the third game in the Big Ten that was canceled. And the worst part about it is that this game, it wasn't even postponed. It was flat out canceled. It's not even going to be made up. But again, Wisconsin's still dealing. And Nebraska also. I mean, it's only a matter of time before it affects the NFL again. And as awful as it is to say, I just don't trust all of these players to do the right thing. I've been proven correct countless amount of times. You give them an inch and they'll take a yard. So another bit of news that I wanted to talk about, and it's basically a rewind from last week, and this is going to be the fallout from what we witnessed on Sunday night. We thought we were going to be in for potentially the game of the year. You had the rematch from week 1 on Sunday night. You have the emergence of the Tampa offense. You have the debut of Antonio Brown. All of their receivers are healthy. You got Godwin, Evans, Brown. You got Gronk in there. And they lay an absolute egg on national TV. And the Saints just absolutely put a beat down on them. It was, what was it, 21-0 before the end of the first quarter?
And Jared Cook fumbled on the 2 in the second possession.
Right. um, in their first, what was it? Their first 4 possessions, Tampa had 14 total plays.
28-0.
Four
Can't happen. Can't just can't happen.
14 plays in 4 possessions, three and outs and a pick. And everyone was all ready to write Drew Brees off. They're going against this great defense. And does Drew Brees have the best arm? No. Did he ever? No. But what Drew Brees has, and potentially more than anybody else in the league, is just football IQ. There is nobody that understands a defense, and I'm including Tom Brady in this. I think more than Drew Brees, because he's had to overcome the fact that he never has had the strongest arm, that he's never had a full arsenal of weapons. Has he always? He's had Michael Thomas. He's had Marquise Colston. He's had Antonio Gates in San Diego. But has Drew Brees ever had the arsenal of weapons that Tom Brady has had in the past or has had this year? And the answer is no. But Drew Brees continues to put up stat after stat and win after win. Now, the biggest thing that he has to do now is win in the playoffs. And I think what they showed this past Sunday night was that this team is built to win in the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. I always thought that the Brees slander was very out of control because the dude's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He has just about every big passing record, who's right on the cusp of it. As you said, he doesn't have the biggest arm, but he makes plenty of tight window throws 10 to 20 yards down the field. That doesn't scream those big-time throws that we see from guys like Herbert now, Mahomes, Wilson, Josh Allen, and it's not as sexy, it's not as fun to watch, but it gets it done. And it may not be the new analytically driven football, but a guy like Mike Leach, who is an offensive guru in college, the first thing that he says about his offense that always tears it up through the passing attack, I don't need a quarterback that can throw it over 30 yards. But when they throw under 30 yards, they better be very accurate and they better be on time. And that perfectly describes the way Drew Brees plays the position of quarterback. He's on time. He knows his personnel better than anyone. He gives those guys room to operate underneath. And I think Sean Payton's a perfect pairing for him. But we were overlooking Drew Brees for the first part of this season, and people weren't talking about it. He didn't have Michael Thomas except for week 1. Emmanuel Sanders has been in and out of the lineup, and they were just leaning on Kamara too much because of the lack of depth they had on the perimeter. But now we saw that potential unleashed last Sunday night.
Yeah, and I think they put the rest of the NFL on notice, and not necessarily just from the offensive onslaught that they put out. The fact that they were able to shut down this offense, the Tampa Bay offense, the one that everybody had been clamoring. And you look at the ESPN, the NFL Network, and the NBC pregame shows. Every single analyst on those 3 networks picked Tampa Bay to win the game. And don't tell me that they didn't know about that. they absolutely knew.
Guilty as well. I mean, that was the first time Tom Brady got swept in the division. Now, he was in the AFC, so it's different. He never faced a team like Drew Brees and Sean Payton every year in New Orleans in the AFC East. But what I will say is Bruce Arians is not Bill Belichick. They were completely outcoached and outclassed in that game. They completely abandoned the run game. Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette had 4 combined carries. And yes, you could say all you want. They're down 28-0 after 14 plays. Why do you think they only ran 14 plays? They came out and they wanted to play with their new toys. Throw out AB, who, for all we know, we're not even sure if he knew all the plays. It seemed like Tom Brady was communicating with him an awful lot. And his second interception was a clear miscommunication where he thought AB was going to take the top off the defense and run a go, and he stopped running a comeback route. Throwing out AB, you have the entire arsenal of Godwin, Evans, Gronk. It looks great on paper. They didn't execute. They didn't move the ball at all. And Todd Bowles is sitting back with a 3-man rush, playing zone defense against Drew Brees, giving him all the time in the world to pick apart that defense. That's not what got them there. It was pressure. 4 and 5 and 6-man pressures and getting in QB's faces and making them uncomfortable and playing press men with some of the best press man corners in football. That's not what the Buccaneers are. That's not what got them there. I have no idea what Todd Bowles and Bruce Arians were thinking last Sunday night.
No, they got outplayed. They got outcoached. They got anything they could have gotten outed. They got outed. And we're gonna get into a little bit of the NFC and the parity. It's one of your takeaways. But before we get into our Week 9 takeaways, we're going to discuss a little mid-season awards. And the 4 that I really want to take a look at are MVP, offensive, defensive rookies of the year, and coach of the year. And for me, the coach of the year is going to be the easiest one for me to pick. But we're looking at MVP, and there's a lot of names that we can discuss right now. Who are some of your front runners for MVP as we head into the middle of the season?
I think before last week it was nothing but Russell Wilson talk, and rightfully so. But they had their toughest game last week. They got handled pretty good by Buffalo, and Wilson had 4 turnovers. So his odds went from -200 to +120 entering this week, which is a pretty catastrophic move in a week. Guys like Mahomes and Rodgers are catching up awfully quickly. Brady was starting to sneak in that conversation, but he's back out now. They stand at 6-3, and he had one of the worst games of his career. If Brady goes on a similar run for the next month or so, maybe he climbs back into the top 3, top 4, but I don't see him being in contention to win. Right now, I would cast my vote for Wilson, but he has to be perfect on that team. That defense isn't good. They rely on him an awful lot. It's not like they have a promising rushing attack that he did in the beginning part of his career. They asked that guy to do so much, and we saw it backfire on them. He had 4 turnovers. He's dropping back over 40 times a game. He's slinging the ball down the field at such a frequent rate. It's a recipe for trouble against good teams like the Bills that can expose that. A guy like Mahomes and guys like Rodgers aren't put in those positions as much as someone like Wilson, which makes me think that those two are going to be more front runners when it comes to Week 17 for me.
See, to me, and this goes back to what I brought up last week. Mahomes is my guy. The only thing that I think will I guess could lead voters into the Wilson or the Rodgers is because of maybe recency bias. We've seen over the last 2 years, Patrick Mahomes has won an MVP and a Super Bowl MVP. Maybe they're looking to spread out the wealth. Obviously, Russell Wilson has never won it, and it's been quite some time since we've seen Aaron Rodgers win it.
And it's the big story this year that Russell Wilson hasn't even gotten an MVP vote, which is ridiculous. That's an unbelievable stat in itself. But like you said, these leagues tend to spread it out, especially in the NBA. They're a perfect example because a guy like LeBron should win it every year, but he doesn't.
Every year, right.
In the NFL, Mahomes could very well likely win it the next 10 years. He'll be in that discussion. He's obviously not going to win it for 10 years straight, but they definitely want to spread the wealth. They're looking for – it's a media-driven award sometimes, whether we want to say that or not. I think Russell Wilson's still the front runner, but I like the prospects of Mahomes or Rodgers to win it over him.
Yeah, and a lot of it is going to have to obviously deal with what happens over the final half of the season. But right now, I'm looking at, and obviously, if you take what MVP should be, the most valuable player to, I would put it as a team that is winning that wouldn't have been where they are without that player. And to me, if you're looking at it from that standpoint, it's Russell Wilson. Because with the way that defense has played, there's no way that Seattle would be anywhere close to being 6-2 without the way that Russell Wilson has played so far this year. Can that change down the stretch? Absolutely. But Russell Wilson is going to have to do what he did over the first half of the season in the second half of the season, or else this team is going to start losing games in the way that they lost this past week to Buffalo. So Rodgers is definitely in it, and I can see Rodgers being a bigger contender than Mahomes, again, because of the recency bias, the fact that we've seen an MVP and a Super Bowl MVP from Mahomes over the past 2 years. And Aaron Rodgers has a very weird relationship with the media.
He's not the most liked guy.
No, sure. It's a roller coaster at best, with a lot of not so much, but a lot of downs. But so that could be one reason why Aaron Rodgers may not win, but he deserves to be in the discussion.
Absolutely.
All right, offensive rookie of the year. To me, this one's pretty easy. I'm sure it's probably as easy for you, but without giving the name that you're thinking of first, who are some other contenders that you think may be up there?
Well, I think the emergence of James Robinson has been one of the best stories in football this year. I mean, undrafted free agent. Nobody's really familiar with him, but he took Illinois State to the Final Four in the FCS playoffs. The dude was getting 40 carries a game in college. He comes to Jacksonville. He wins the starting spot, and it was after they cut Fournette, and Doug Marrone put out the quote, we love the guys in our room. We know they're going to produce. We're very confident in our running backs to replicate or exceed a Leonard Fournette. And all I could think of, I'm rolling my eyes. And I'm not even a huge Leonard Fournette guy, but it's just coach speak. Like, come on, who do you have in that room? Devine Ozigbo, Raquel Armstead. But then it's this guy, James Robinson. He comes up. Don't really know who he is. I knew he was an FCS guy. I knew he was a stud down there, but he's been tearing it up. And it's just a shame he's on a bad team because he would be getting more recognition. I think him and I think Justin Jefferson. He is just such a good football player. Like, he doesn't have the 4.3 speed. He's not 6'3", and he looks like he's made in a lab, like a Claypool or like a Denzel Mims. But his football savvy, his ball skills, his ability to separate and get open consistently is a trademark to the craft of being a really good receiver now. I mean, the biggest critique on him, besides maybe an athleticism standpoint for him, was he only played in the slot at LSU. And now we're seeing him dominate from the outside in Minnesota's rookie year without a training camp. So he's someone that deserves a lot of recognition. He's not going to be in the contention to win, but I think those are two guys that deserve a lot of praise. And I think it comes down to Burrow and Herbert as the front runners here.
Yeah, and you look at Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow is he is 8th in the league in passing as a rookie. I mean, it's pretty unbelievable what he's been able to do on a team that was as bad as it was, who has seen a little bit of an improvement in the offensive line, but not a whole lot. And the biggest contributor, aside from Tyler Boyd, has been a rookie. T. Higgins who, again, he's not going to receive a whole lot of recognition in terms of Offensive Rookie of the Year, but he has a lot to do with the success of Joe Burrow. But to me, the hands down winner right now is Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert is third in the league in yards per game. He has the second best touchdown to interception rate over the first 7 games of his career, only outdone by Patrick Mahomes. He has the most passing yards in the first 7 games of the career, just slightly outperforming Patrick Mahomes. And the fact that his first start he didn't know about until a few minutes before the game. And he just has not looked back because he almost beat the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes that particular game. You look at the fact that he's been able to do it, and Keenan Allen, again, we've discussed this, that Keenan Allen does not get the recognition that he deserves. Keenan Allen is a superstar wide receiver, but you need more than just Keenan Allen to be able to put up the kind of numbers that he's been able to put up. And we've seen guys like Jerome Guyton put up a big game here or there. Mike Williams is starting to contribute over the past couple weeks after not being able to stay on the field. Hunter Henry he's been solid and consistent, but he hasn't been, I think, what a lot of people were expecting him to be, especially in an offense like that. But to have the lack of dynamic weapons that he has, and to be able to put up the numbers that he's been putting up, I mean, the only number that you have to be worrisome about is the wins. Why is he? And I know that their defense has taken big hits. We haven't seen Joey Bosa play full games. He comes out way too often for a superstar defensive end. Derwin James is the key to that defense. They lose him right before the season starts. But this is still a talented enough defense that with the amount of offense that Justin Herbert is putting up, they still should be winning games. And the fact that they're not, it's really confusing to me.
Yeah, just to add to your Burrow and Herbert sentiment, just what these guys are doing, just how this league and the offseason was structured, the fact that these two come in without an offseason, without nearly as much time to learn a playbook as any other year, and they're playing at this level of play, and just like you said off Herbert, a guy who wasn't even expecting to go in the game against the Chiefs in week 2, it's absolutely remarkable. And just the point that I would add, and I was getting in this argument with someone a couple of weeks ago where both of them do have some pretty solid perimeters. They have some skill, but I was making this argument about Darnold, for example, who, I mean, I think he's his days are numbered as a Jet, but he hasn't had as much help, and that's usually kind of the saving grace for him. And I do think he's a very talented quarterback. But I brought up Justin Herbert. I mean, not a good offensive line. He's running for his life half the time. He doesn't have all day back there to make the pretty reads and those big time throws that we see every single week. I mean, he's making a lot of plays on his own. Keenan Allen is a superstar, as you said, but Mike Williams has been hampered by injuries. I think he's missed two of the starts that Herbert's played in. He's in and out of the lineup. He's played with Eckler once. Hunter Henry kind of looks like a shell of himself. I mean, he's an injury-prone guy, but we were expecting him to be a real difference maker at tight end. He's more of just kind of a security blanket at this point. So for a guy like Herbert, who I agree is my rookie of the year right now, I mean, what he's doing, he looks like Patrick Mahomes as a rookie version. I mean, the throws he's making, only a few guys, you can count on one hand how many guys can make the throws he's making. He's doing it in his first couple starts. For the wins aspect, I would just say I think it comes a lot of it comes down to coaching and defense. When you score 30, like the Chargers have been doing consistently and Herbert starts, you should win those games. Time management, play calling, how conservative they get, their defense running out of steam at the end of these games, that doesn't fall on Herbert. And unless Anthony Lynn significantly turns this around, I hope that they would part ways with Lynn and bring in a guy like Eric Bieniemy from Kansas City. You bring in a guy like Bieniemy with his prowess for those skill players in that offense, I think the sky is the limit for Herbert.
If they end up moving on from Anthony Lynn, that means that they did not have a successful second half of the season, which means they're going to have a top 10 pick in the draft. Now, they may look to shore up the defense. There is, I love the top of this year's draft. I think the top 15 picks in this draft are all going to be difference makers right away. And we haven't even seen some of these guys because they've either opted out or their conferences haven't played. We're going to start seeing other names rise up the boards once we get into the draft season, the combine season. I'm really interested to see how the NFL handles the combine this year.
Yeah, it's going to be absolute chaos, and the invites are going to go to a lot of guys, like you just said, who didn't even play this year.
Yep. Yes. All right. So now we will get into Defensive Rookie of the Year, and the two of us actually disagree on Defensive Rookie of the Year. So who is your guy that you have right now as the Defensive Rookie of the Year?
Preseason, if you remember, I went with Kenneth Murray, but he's been a real liability in pass coverage so far. They're asking a lot of him, and that was going to be a tough transition for him.
He was so good in college.
He was. It's just a lot of these linebackers, especially these inside guys, are not super sharp in coverage, and it's a really tough transition going into the pro games when he's facing a guy like Mahomes twice a year. I mean, that's a lot to ask. Right. I think the inside backer that could contend is Patrick Queen, but my pick is Chase Young, who was your pick, Ryan, preseason. Yep. He's missed a few games. He's been hampered, but he has 3.5 sacks, and I just think the impact that he makes in the game is absolutely remarkable as a guy who's only played 9 career games so far. I mean, I saw a video last week of play where in the Giants game, he was literally triple teamed on pass pro. It was a tight end shipping on him and a tackle and a guard just kind of funneling in Chase Young because they're so worried about him. He's going to get every team's best shot. He's going to get double teamed. He's going to get chipped. He's going to have the running back on the side and pass pro. And he's still making a huge impact, and the numbers speak to that. But even his impact in the run game is absolutely remarkable. He has an unbelievable motor. I think he's going to be one of the best defensive ends in the league for years to come. He's my pick for Rookie of the Year.
So the guy that I'm picking right now is Antoine Winfield Jr., and that's because he's playing on a winning team. He's had a big impact on look, last year we saw the Tampa Bay run defense, I believe, was ranked 6th in the NFL. But you could pass on them all game long. And Antoine Winfield is one of the reasons why this defense is now number 1 overall in – I haven't seen ever since the pounding from the Saints if they're still number 1 overall in total defense. But going into the week, the Tampa Bay defense was number 1 in total defense. And a lot of it has to do with the non-pass interference call that would have tied up the game against the Giants. But I'm not bitter about that or anything. I guess he made a good play on the ball.
The rest want to go home.
So I just think that the impact that he has had, he's had big picks in big situations. He very rarely misses a tackle. He's one of the surest tacklers I've seen from a defensive back, a rookie defensive back in quite some time. I just really like everything that he brings to the game. Give me one or two other guys that you like that could potentially move into the discussion over the second half of the year.
I love that pick, by the way. I've been a huge Winfield guy. I thought he was a first rounder, and you could just see he plays like his dad. He's cerebral. He reminds me of Earl Thomas, maybe not as fast in the middle of the field, but he's just so smart. I love that pick. But another guy I think should be in the mix and could be more in the mix is Jeremy Chin. This defense has taken off. The first month of the year, they really struggled, and I really think they kind of didn't find a position for Jeremy Chin. They were bringing him off the edge. They're asking a lot from him in coverage, but he is that Swiss Army knife. He's kind of what we expected from Isaiah Simmons, who still is struggling to garner snaps in Arizona, but they line him up at safety. They line him up at will. They line him up at Sam. They line him up at corner. They're lining him up in the nickel. He can do everything. Maybe he's not necessarily a master of anything, but he's good at everything. One thing I would say he's a master of his tackling. He is as short a tackler as it gets. He's an unbelievable athlete, and if we're going to talk about motor, that kid he's special. He's going to be the leader of that defense with Matt Rule, and they're going to be tied to the hip as long as Matt Rule's there. He's a defensive-minded head coach, and Derek Brown was the sexy first-round pick. He is the big-time prospect, but Jeremy Chin is the heart and soul of that defense for years to come.
Yeah, I absolutely love what Jeremy Chin has been. And it's crazy for a program that has very rarely done anything. Southern Illinois always seems to put out one guy every draft that has an impact somewhere on an NFL team. And Jeremy Chin is that guy this year. Two names that I wanted to bring up. One is Patrick Queen. With the way that defense has been playing, we've seen Queen have big time games in terms of putting up tackles, and then also he's had a return for a touchdown. He's had a couple recoveries so far this year. Patrick Queen is a name to look out for, and a name that nobody talked about is somebody who I had as a first rounder and fell to 50th overall, and that's Jalen Johnson. He's the cornerback for the Chicago Bears. In our live mock draft that we did before the 2020 draft, I mocked Jalen Johnson to the Raiders with one of their picks in the first round, the one that they ended up, I believe, with AJ Terrell. I thought Jalen Johnson was a first round pick. Obviously, his injury history was a big thing in his fall down the boards, but he hasn't put up the interception numbers, which for a cornerback, if you're going to win Defensive Rookie of the Year, you have to put up interception numbers. But you have to look at the play, and if you look at the passer rating in throws at the receivers who he is covering, and also the completion percentage of the receivers he's covering, he's amongst the leaders in the entire NFL, not just amongst rookies. So I really like Jalen Johnson.
He was tied to the hip with Okuda and CJ
Yep.
Henderson, who both went the top 10. And he has the ball skills of those guys. But like you said, I think it was his third shoulder surgery when he tore his labrum in his junior year, end of his junior year. Couldn't do the Senior Bowl stuff, couldn't do the combine. So a lot of question marks for him. But, I mean, he's proven that should definitely be in that class of corners.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so we're going to get into our Week 9 takeaways. We are running. Actually, before the Week 9 takeaways, let's do midseason Coach of the Year real quick. There's only one name that I have in mind, and I have a feeling it could be the same name that you'd be thinking of.
Well, I'm going Mike Tomlin. I mean,
oh, okay, different.
I'm going Mike Tomlin, but when we looked preseason at this team, we knew what we were going to get out of the defense. Top defense. They went 8-8 because they played with Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges, and they were one of the only – I mean, they were one of the worst offenses in all of football. Now you get a competent quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger, who isn't – I mean, he's past his prime. Talk about a guy who doesn't throw down the field. Breeze gets a lot of flack. Statistically, Roethlisberger didn't attempt one pass of over 15 air yards last week in their win against Dallas, but he had 330 yards. It was enough to win. It was not pretty, but they're 8-0. They stand at the 1 seed, and they are overtaking the Ravens for the AFC North, who were the most dominant team in football last year. I could see a few guys, but I like Tomlin's prospects right now just because of the sheer turnaround. They already matched their win total from a year ago, halfway through the season. So I'm going to go with Mike Tomlin.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Tomlin obviously deserves a ton of credit. And when you're undefeated, you're obviously going to get put into that discussion for Coach of the Year. And to be honest, I thought he did a better job of coaching last year than he did this year, than he's done this year, because there's no way that they should have had a chance at the playoffs last year. And they were right in the thick of things. But to me, the easy guy is Brian Flores. What Brian Flores has done down in Miami. Over their he's won 10 of their last 16 games. 10 of their last. So over the last season's worth of games, they're a 10-win team. After not winning a game the first half of the season, that in his first season with the team. So started off 0-8, and he's won 10 of 16 since. And what he's done with the team, I mean, they play hard for him every single down. And when you're a coach, that's what elevates you. When you see the level of compete from player number 1 to player number 53 on the roster, that tells you everything you need to know. And they're getting the level of compete from everybody on that team is what is the main reason to me that they are now right in the thick of things in terms of not only the AFC playoff picture, but also the AFC East. They're only 2 games behind Buffalo. This is the job that Brian Flores has done down there is just something I can't overlook.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great pick. I mean, I think we're expecting an improvement preseason. Both of us, especially, we're definitely expecting improvement, but not this much. I mean, what he's doing, he's building a culture. What there is so much buy-in there. That move to Tua, they're not 2-0, but that move to Tua was very controversial. Could have very easily divided the locker room, kind of picking sides between Fitz and Tua, but that's not happening. This team, it hasn't missed a beat yet, and they're playing behind Tua, and they believe in what Flores and Chris Greer, their GM, are doing.
All right, so we're going to get into our Week 9 takeaways. We're only going to do one apiece because we're running a little short on time. So why don't you give us the thing that stuck out to you the most about Week 9?
So we are at the midway point for every team, and it's crisis report time. It's time to evaluate your team's future for a lot of teams. It's time to be honest. And where I'm going with this is quarterbacks. The quarterback carousel that we saw in the 2019 offseason was pretty remarkable. It's a position you really don't see that much turnover in. I mean, it's the franchise position. It's the most important position in the sport. It's the leader of your franchise. And we saw three teams pick quarterbacks in the top five, and they're all starting right now. And we saw Jordan Love go to Green Bay in the late part of the first round. Nothing crazy, but we saw Philip Rivers go to Indy, Tom Brady go to Tampa, Teddy Bridgewater go to the Panthers, Cam Newton go to the Patriots, Jameis Winston back up in the Saints. And if you want to count Nick Foles, who was in a competition with Trubisky, is now the starter in the Bears. That's a lot of movement. This year, the potential for the QB turnover, I think, is maybe double that. So I made a tier chart of where teams are with their quarterback situation. So the list was over half the league at teams that I think could be aggressive in moves to quarterbacks. So the teams that stuck out to me, I have three teams that I am pretty confident they will pick a quarterback in the first round, and that is the Jets, the Jags, and Washington football team. And all of them are in the top five right now. I think they're all going to grab one of the top four quarterbacks, them being Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, Zach Wilson. My next tier was those teams on the borderline who have a fringe starter that maybe they believe in, maybe they don't. And I could see them, depending on their draft position and contingent on how they finish the rest of the season, they also could draft a quarterback. So I went Patriots, Broncos, Giants, Cowboys if they don't re-sign Dak, 49ers, Bears, Vikes, Panthers. And my last tier were the old quarterbacks and the teams that need someone underneath to start a new age. So that was the Steelers, the Colts, the Lions, the Saints, the Bucs, and the Falcons. That adds up to 17 teams, more than half the league. I didn't include the Eagles because they drafted Hurts, and Wentz isn't even he's going to be in Philadelphia through 2021, just the way his contract's structured. And I didn't include Cleveland, who will probably exercise Baker Mayfield's fifth-year option, so next year will be his make-or-break year. But that's over half the league. And this is going to become the new norm in the NFL. We saw Josh Rosen he was a top 10 pick in 2018. He is tied at the hip with Steve Wilkes, goes 3-10 in his 13 starts, 11 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. They had enough of him. Traded him for a second-round pick to Miami. Starts 0-5. Keys go to Ryan Fitzpatrick. He finishes out just as you said. They go 5-11. All those wins under Fitzpatrick, they had enough of them. Tried to shop him, cut him. Now he's on Tampa Bay's practice squad. He's an anomaly, but the days of grooming quarterbacks, waiting for them to mold and develop, those days are over. Jobs are too volatile. Wins have to come, or progression has to come if you're a head coach or an executive position. And these coaches are most of the time evaluated by the young quarterbacks they bring in or the quarterbacks they have on their team. So I think that is going to become a new norm in the NFL, but the potential for this offseason in terms of quarterback movement is at an all-time high.
So the one team that stuck out to me that you had in the old quarterbacks was the Saints. And I think we've all seen the writing on the wall that this could potentially be Drew Brees' last season, especially if they go out with a Super Bowl. And so that you would obviously think that would leave them in position to need a quarterback. I think they have their quarterback, and it's not Taysom Hill. I think that the reason that they signed Jameis Winston was to groom him to be the next starter on the team, to get him around someone like Drew Brees, someone who understands how to take care of the ball, get that into his head, sort of change how he looks at the field. Could they decide to move in another direction? Yeah, but I think the way that the Saints are going, I think that they could potentially that they have their guy in the locker room already.
Absolutely, and we're going to see it with Sam Darnold. I mean, he was still a top 3 pick in 2018. Someone, if I'm
He's gonna be a starter on another team next year.
exactly, if I'm a team, if I'm the Steelers, if I'm the Colts, one of those teams, I'm throwing a second round pick because it's not even going to be a great pick either. Those teams aren't going to draft high. It's not going to be a great pick. I'm throwing a second rounder, see if the Jets take it, and I could mold him into my franchise guy. And Jameis Winston's another perfect example of that. He's not as young as Darnold, but he's a first overall pick, and his arm talent is very apparent. It's all mental for him. As you said, it's all taking care of the football. Football IQ, situational IQ. If he can hone in those skills and even half of Drew Brees' IQ rub off on him, with Sean Payne, the potential is through the roof.
You want to hear where I think is a perfect landing spot for someone like a Sam Darnold, and it's going to be funny because the Jets traded from number 6 to number 3 to get in position to draft Sam Darnold. The team that they traded with was the Indianapolis Colts. Tell me Sam Darnold is not a perfect fit for the Indianapolis Colts, because I think Philip Rivers has shown us that he's reached the end of he's on the last hole of the back nine. He has not looked good at all this year. They were expecting him to just be a game manager because they were going to be able to run the ball and play good defense. And you know what? They have been. But they're winning in spite of Philip Rivers, not because he's done necessarily a great job managing the game. But you put Sam Darnold there with, tell me he doesn't reinvigorate T.Y. Hilton. Tell me he doesn't make Michael Pittman Jr. a stud right away. I mean, that to me, that's a perfect landing spot for someone like him. They're going to have probably somewhere between, I would assume, 15 and 25. You throw there's a second round pick in the middle to bottom third of the second round. I think the Jets jump on that right away, especially if they end up with the number 1 pick and taking Trevor Lawrence.
Absolutely. And we saw with, if Josh Rosen goes for a second, Darnold's proved a lot more than Josh Rosen ever did. So, I mean, just from those teams' perspectives, and it wasn't necessarily the right decision to trade Rosen for a second round pick, but they also didn't know. We didn't really know if he could play in Arizona. We still might not really know if Josh Rosen can play, but that's just the nature of the quarterback position right now. And I think Darnold's talent and his moxie and his toughness are they warrant a second round pick for a good team that has a good structure and good coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's this is going to be one, and the biggest name you mentioned it because I'm not sold that Dak Prescott is going to be with the Dallas Cowboys next year. I think that there is a very good chance that they end up with one of the top 5 picks. And even though they looked pretty good against Pittsburgh this weekend, I think that was more of an anomaly than it was how they're going to be playing over the second half of the season. I don't see many wins coming the Cowboys' way over the second half. Like I said, there's a very good chance they're in a position to take one of those guys that will become the successor to Dak Prescott, and where he ends up is going to set the tone for where everyone else and ends up landing.
No doubt about it.
So my takeaway from Week 9 is that Davante Adams is the best wide receiver in the game, and it's not even close. You throw any other name at me, and it's not even going to be close. He is over the and I love these small sample size things, but over the last 3 games, and that includes a week where he only had 53 yards. He is averaging 100, almost just under 141 yards per game, which comes out to 22, a pace of 2,250 yards in a season. He also has 6 touchdowns over those 3 games. And you look back at week 1, another 156 yards and 2 touchdowns. So in the 4 healthy games that he's had this year, he has 8 touchdowns and almost 150 yards a game. I mean, and it's not like there are other guys on that team that that teams are going to say, all right, well, maybe we'll shadow Adams here, and then we'll shadow Alan Lazard there, or Marquez Valdez-Scantling there, or Equanimous. I don't even know if St. Brown's even on the team anymore. I just love the name Equanimous St. Brown. Speaking of which, go Irish. Number
what, 2?
2, yeah.
Number 2. Boys are in the playoffs right now.
And to be honest, I think even if they lose to Clemson in the ACC championship, there's a good chance they end up in the top 4 also. But that's neither here nor there. I'll hold in my Irish pride until things even out or get closer to the finish line. But boy, was that a hell of a game.
That was awesome. That was such a good ending. Ian Book played great. That was the best I've ever seen him play.
Yeah, and they asked him to do more through the air than they usually do. The threat of him running just keeps defenses in check. And I mean, that ball that he threw to Avery Davis on that 91-yard drive to tie the game at the end of regulation was as perfect a throw as you can expect a college kid to make, especially given the circumstances of which surrounded that throw. But boy, that was fun. That was as fun. And I've been to. In fact, I saw it came up as a memory on Facebook. What was it 8 years ago when they went to the national championship and got blown out by Alabama? I drove up to Boston to see them play Boston College, and I mean there were more Notre Dame fans in the stadium than there were Eagle fans, and that brought them to 10-0 that season. It was the week after the USC game that went into triple overtime and gave me multiple aneurysms. So yeah, back Davante Adams is great. On to our picks. So we have Thursday night, and we were talking about this before the show started. We're getting a really good Thursday night matchup for the first, or at least on paper. We've seen the good matchups turn into be not so great matchups, and we've seen the games we wish we wouldn't have had turn out to be we were talking about the New England Jets game, and we were saying, oh, are we gonna have to sit there? That was a pretty entertaining game. That was
Joe Flacco weirdly looks good.
Oh my goodness! You that's why they play the games. They say first performance says and right even Sunday, and what we've seen this season, any given Sunday goes for any team in the NFL. But we've got the Titans and the Colts, which should be a real. And I love watching division games, especially when you have. And I know Tennessee's defense has not been what it has been over the past couple of years, but these are still 2 hard-hitting defenses that are going to look to attack the other team's offenses. What are you looking at for this for tomorrow night's game.
I think the heavyweight battle of this Tennessee offense versus Colts defense.
Yeah.
The Titans offense hasn't looked the same since they lost Taylor Lewan to an ACL tear 2 weeks ago. I mean, the run game is not nearly as efficient. Ryan Tannehill is not nearly as comfortable back there.
And don't think the loss of Jack Conklin over the offseason hasn't had a lot to do with the inefficiencies of the run game over the majority of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a big advantage to the Colts for that reason in that matchup. I mean, their front seven's been so dominant. With the addition of DeForest Buckner in there, he's been so disruptive. He's one of the best interior D linemen, one of the most versatile defensive linemen in all of football. They got Darius Leonard back, and when he's in there, they are one of the elite bunches in football. They were still, when he had played for the first month of the year, we saw that Colts defense take off, and you're wondering, is this real or is it more of a fluke? He leaves for a couple of weeks, and they kind of starting to come back down to earth. He's come back the past 2 weeks. They've gone right back up to what we saw from them from the first month of the year. I think it's them. I think it's the Bucs. I mean, I think the Bears are up there, but the Ravens and Steelers come to mind as well. But other than that, I mean, those are the elite defenses that come to mind. But this defense is right up there with them. I think they're going to take away the run game with Derrick Henry. And I think the Titans are really going to struggle to score. They've struggled to score the past 2 weeks. I like the Colts in this matchup because I expect them to at least run the football with some efficiency against the Titans defense, as you alluded to. They've struggled this year. It's not the Mike Vrabel defense we're used to seeing. And I think that the Colts have a chance to pick them apart and win in a tight game, but I expect them to have their way with the Titans.
So Darius Leonard over the last 2 games, the 2 games that he's been back since the injury and the bye, has 20 solo tackles, 4 assist tackles, a sack, a fumble recovery, and a forced fumble.
It's pretty good. And he shuts down the running game. He shuts down the passing attack for a running game. He shuts down the passing attack against tight ends. He's unbelievable. I mean, that dude, it's him and it's Fred Warner. Those are the 2 best inside backers for my money, and I don't think it's that close.
Yeah, and to be honest, and I haven't always been able to watch as much Green Bay over the past couple of years as I would have liked to. But I kept hearing Blake Martinez can make any tackle on the field, but don't you dare try and put him in coverage. I tell you what, he's been a lot better in coverage than I think anyone could have ever given him credit for. And I think he's one of the major factors into the turnaround of the Giants defense. But he's still not Darius Leonard. Darius Leonard is he's the biggest difference maker from the linebacker position in the entire league. And in a league that doesn't necessarily favor linebackers. It's not a linebacker league anymore. It's all about the pass rushers and it's all about the secondaries. We're starting to see teams consistently play 2 or 1 linebackers on the field at a given time. We don't see base defenses anymore. And that's because we don't see base offenses. If a team's going to come out in 3, 4, 5 receiver sets, you can't have linebackers on the field. So that's what makes what Darius Leonard has been able to do all that more impressive. I also think that the Colts are going to be able to run the ball efficiently, but who's it going to be? Who's going to be the one rushing the ball? Because we're all still waiting for the Jonathan Taylor breakout. You know me, I've been waiting for it. I've been calling for it, and it hasn't been there. And over the past couple of weeks, Jordan Wilkins has looked exponentially better than Jonathan Taylor.
I thought it was coming last week until that fumble. You look good until that point, fumbles the ball, he's out of the game. I mean, I think it's going to be a committee. It's going to be those two and Naeem Hines in passing situations, and I think that gets the job done. That's still a top 10 rushing attack in football. I don't think they're quite hitting the ceiling that we envisioned, but against this Titans defense, I do see that as a matchup in their favor.
Yeah. So it sounds like both of us are taking the Colts this week. Is that's who you're picking? You're picking the Colts?
I am taking the Colts on Thursday.
Yep. All right. So now we'll move to Sunday, and we get the head-to-head matchup of our boys. How does it feel to be 3-4-1, and no matter what happens this weekend, you're still going to be in first place?
It's disgusting. I hate it. I hate it. And I listen to talk show radio, like local Philly sports talk radio, and it's gross, like what I hear, because we had the bye week, so it's reflection period, and I'm listening to all these people. I'm willing to forgive them for the first half of the year. We're on to greener pastures. We're in first place. We got to remember we're in first place. And it's like, well, if you're in any other division in football, you're not in first place. And it's become a thing in Philadelphia now. We saw last year they made the play. They squeaked in at 9-7, but like if anyone makes the playoffs this year, especially the Eagles in the NFC East, it's not a real playoff appearance. It's going to be a one and done. And if they were to win, it's because they get the home field advantage. They're not a real playoff team. It's a flaw in the system, but it frustrates me that fans think because we're leading in the division, that's good enough.
Yeah, and I'm looking at what happened the first time these two teams played, and I mean, the Giants gave away a game. Evan Ingram makes that catch. They're able to seal the game. He doesn't, and exactly what happens every time the Giants give the Eagles the slightest bit of hope, they take advantage of it and they win the game. That's just what the Eagles have done to the Giants for the better part of a decade. And frankly, it's really frustrating. So you need to stop. You need to stop. I've had enough of it, but I don't see it happening this week. We saw the last time these two teams played, the Eagles did not have Miles Sanders. Looks like he's on track to play this weekend. I know he was limited in practice today, but it looks like all signs are pointing to him playing. Alshon Jeffrey practiced in full. That's a huge addition to this offense. Carson Wentz trusts him, and while I'm not expecting a huge game out of Alshon Jeffrey, I know he's going to make one or two big-time catches in a big-time situation because that's what he does with Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz, the numbers, I don't have them in front of me, and I really should. The numbers that Carson Wentz puts up when Alshon Jeffrey is in the game to when he's not in the game is astronomical. He opens up so much for the rest of the team. And what about Dallas Goedert? Is Dallas Goedert looking to be on track to playing this week?
Yeah, so he only saw one target in that Dallas game. He played less than half the snaps. I think it was kind of a tune-up, and I mean they won that game, and it wasn't pretty, but I think they expected it to be a little easier than it did, and kind of almost groom Goddard back without throwing him in there. He got the extra 2 weeks of rest, and he's going to be fully ready to go, and I expect him to log just about every tight end snap. So he's a huge addition. He's another huge addition, especially for Carson Wentz.
Yeah, and the Giants. It looks like Golden Tate has seen himself out of the rotation. I'm not expecting him to be a Giant for much longer. They did sign Dante Pettis, but we did see the emergence of Austin Mack this past week. Had a huge 50-yard catch, and Daniel Jones seemed to look comfortable targeting him throughout most of the game. We saw him be a much bigger part of the offense than Darius Slayton was. Slayton needs to sit down and rest a week or two because the toe injury is just not getting better. And he looked like a liability against Washington. He was not sharp coming out of his breaks. He was not able to put any pressure down the field that we've seen in the past, especially against Washington. He's been able to light up Washington in the first 3 games that he had played against them. But he's not right. Sterling Shepard is as healthy as Sterling Shepard is ever going to be, but that's still not as healthy as he should be. So we saw a lot of Austin Mack, and we actually saw Evan Ingram get involved and actually hold on to some balls this past week. I just think that the additions that Philly has from the first time that they played to this week, and they're coming off of a bye, which will only help Lane Johnson. I mean that guy needed a bye week more than anybody else in the NFL.
You really did.
But I'm going to take. As much as it kills me, I am picking the Eagles in this game.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the Lane Johnson addition is the biggest one for me. It's clear that the chemistry is going to take some time. The Eagles got back Rager and Goddard for that Dallas game, and the offense still didn't look right. And yeah, they were without Miles Sanders and Lane Johnson, 2 of their biggest pieces, but there's more firepower that we were looking for, and it was still a stale offense. And I still expect some of that against the stingy Giants defense. They're trending in the right direction. The general direction of the Giants is going in a good direction under Joe Judge. I think it's going to come down to the quarterback play. Daniel Jones is coming off his first turnover-free game. Carson Wentz hasn't had one of those in 2020. In the first matchup, Daniel Jones thrust the Eagles right back in the game with 3 turnovers to Carson's 1 turnover, which it's been a huge Achilles heel for the Eagles. It's them back from a 60-minute game. They showed spurts, but they never put it together. It's a quarter here, a quarter there, and then it's 2 quarters they disappear, turning the football over, sloppy football. And I really expect them to put it together this week against the Giants, but I think those additions will be too much to overcome for the Giants, so I'm going to take the Eagles in this one.
And in the first game, if you remember, I nailed the 3-way bet. I said take the Eagles to win, the Giants to cover, and take the under. All 3 came in. I like the Eagles to cover the 3, and but this time I like the over. It's at 44.5. The Giants they're clicking more on offense now than they have over the first 5-6 games of the year, and I think, again, like we've said, the health and the additions that the Philly offense is only going to improve them. So I do like the over there. So then we're going to move to what should have been a game of the year candidate, and it was last year with Baltimore heading up to New England to take on the Patriots, who had to rely on a last-second Nick Folk field goal to beat the New York Jets. I know we were talking in our chat. The big thing that stood out to me about the New England Patriots was, and if you tuned into Sunday Morning Fantasy, I gave you my sleeper of the week as Jacoby Myers, and boy, did he not disappoint me. I was down by 2 points in one league heading into Monday night in a half-point PPR. Going against Jamison Crowder, and I had Jacoby Myers. I put my money where my mouth was. I played him when I said I would, and I won the game comfortably.
He looked unbelievable. I mean, he's Chris Rottweiler, great hands. He looks like a legitimate receiver and someone they should have been utilizing last year a lot more.
Yeah, and shout out to former co-host of the Zero Technique Football podcast, Jared Zero, who has been preaching the breakout, the eventual breakout of Jacoby Myers for a couple weeks now, and I mean the kid is just getting targets, and he's finding himself in a role in this offense where he's the clear number one option, and because the running game is handled by so many different. They have three guys right now that they can count on, and that's even without Sony Michel. Sony Michel hasn't been around in quite some time. They trust Rex Burkhead, they trust Damian Harris, and they trust James White. So in terms of actual options on this team, Jacoby Myers is the number one guy.
No doubt about it.
And we did see the Ravens beat the Colts last week. There's still something wrong with this team.
Oh, no doubt about it. Absolutely.
I don't know what their identity is anymore. Their identity was to just run the ball down your throats, and I don't know if it's because of Mark Ingram. But Mark Ingram to me is not a difference maker. He's a guy that does what he's asked to do. I think J.K. Dobbins is obviously a much more talented player. I think Gus Edwards is better at doing what they ask Mark Ingram to do than Mark Ingram is at doing it. But to me, it comes down to the offensive line. Marshall Yanda, not there anymore. Ronnie Stanley, out for the year. And that's just two of the biggest pieces that you can miss from a team that wants to run the ball down your throat.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been overlooked a lot. Marshall Yanda was, I think he made the last 9 Pro Bowls. Something ridiculous. Best guards of all time. Yeah. He is the Ravens offense. Run mauler. He is just moving guys, and it doesn't matter. Last year when Lamar Jackson was at his peak, when the Ravens were at their peak, you knew what they were doing. They were doing zone read with Mark Ingram and Lamar Jackson, and you couldn't stop it. This year, it's not the same at all.
But the one thing that you don't have to worry about is their defense. Their defense just continues to be the reason that they're in position to win every single game. And it's funny because even though we talk about this offense and how it just doesn't look right, they still have yet to score fewer than 20 points in a game. So they're still doing enough to win games. But this defense is as legit as it comes.
Yeah, and with this matchup, I mean, I always felt that the Ravens were kind of the Patriots' kryptonite throughout the years when the Patriots were the dominant AFC team, because the Ravens match up really well with them. The Patriots are always a team that's going to take away the run, but the Ravens run the ball with more efficiency than anyone over the past 10 years with John Harbaugh. And the speed that they had on defense always gave Tom Brady in that perimeter fits. It was always a matchup nightmare, and we saw it last night Sunday Night Football. We were building up the Patriots as one of the greatest defenses ever. They were 8-0, and they came into Baltimore last year on Sunday night and absolutely handled them. And since that point, the Patriots have been 7-10, which is something crazy to think about.
Wow. And it was very close to being 6-11. I think it was 1-18. I saw the stat. Cam Newton was 1-18 when he faced a double-digit fourth quarter lead in his career. A double-digit fourth quarter deficit. He just has not been able to come back when the odds are stacked against him. Luckily for him, he was playing the Jets, and
Yeah,
they
it's gonna
did.
be that baby.
And the Jets are going to jet. Um, Adam Gase is going to Gase.
Oh my gosh, unbelievable! Just when
Uh,
Joe Flacco's looking like his elite self again.
right? Yeah. Oh yeah, we haven't seen that in 7 years. Imagine having one season, and off of that one season, you never have to do anything for the rest of your life because that contract will keep your family rich generations to come.
Did you see him pass Joe Montana?
Joe Montana
in passing yards that game?
Yeah.
Just because he's been playing forever. Like that's literally the only reason why.
And it goes to show you cannot compare eras in the NFL because Joe Montana is still maybe the greatest thrower of the football I've ever seen. He and I was fortunate enough to see, because in the late 80s, early 90s, Giants Niners was as big a thing as an East Coast versus West Coast rivalry that there could have been. I mean, they constantly played each other in the playoffs, and the 2 years that the Giants won the Super Bowl in 86 and 90, they beat the Joe Montana led 49ers, and they knocked them out of the game in both games. But I mean, Joe Montana was he was Drew Brees with a better arm.
It's a perfect way to put it.
He just, if Joe Montana played in this era, he would have put up the Drew Brees plus numbers.
Absolutely.
He just played in an era that said you have to run the ball 30 times a game. and when you have guys like Roger Craig in the 80s, who, I mean, Roger Craig to me is one of the most underrated running backs in the history of the league.
Absolutely.
But oh yeah, I forgot how we got to Joe Montana, and that was because of Joe Flacco. Hey, so obviously I'm picking the Ravens because I just don't think the Patriots are that good of a football team. And even though they are not, the Ravens are not where we expect them to be offensively, I just don't see the Patriots being able to move the ball with any regularity.
Absolutely, I agree. I think the Ravens are going to dominate this game.
Yep, and that brings us to Monday night, where I'm actually, as awful as this game may sound, with the Bears and the Vikings. Again, I love divisional matchups. The Bears defense, and what did I say on the fantasy show? I said I like the Bears pieces. I don't like the Titans pieces, but I'm picking the Titans to win. And that's exactly, I mean, we saw the Titans offense didn't really do a whole lot, considering they put up 24 points. That it didn't feel like an offense that was going to put up 24 points. And I just think that this Bear, now I know the defensive tackle, three names, just the name is escaping me, has had a major impact on the Bears defense, is out for the year with a shoulder injury. But this is still one of the top 5 defenses in the league. They're going to get after a subpar offensive line, and we've seen. I know we've talked about the potential of Minnesota having a really strong second half of the season. They've looked sharp over the a couple times over the past couple weeks. Um, I'm picking the Bears this week.
I'm going to go with the Vikings just because they're on a roll. It's the first time they've actually looked like the team we were expecting, and Dalvin Cook is just on an absolute tear. This Chicago defense is always going to keep them in the game, and I expect it to be tight till the end, and I think it is going to be a big game for Kirk Cousins. He's got to be able to take care of the football like he has the past few games, and that's a big – Dalvin Cook's a big part in that, where they can shorten the game, they can lean on him, and I expect them to do the same. I don't think with nearly as much efficiency, but this Bears is a mess. I mean, they have some weapons and they have some guys to get excited about on the perimeter, but their offensive line is absolutely awful. Nick Foles, it usually takes him 3 quarters to start making throws, some decent throws. I'm not a huge fan of Matt Nagy's play calling. They never seem to get in rhythm. There's always to be something wrong, and they never put up points you think they're going to put up. I'm going to go with the Vikings in a title just because of the way they're trending. Dalvin has transformational in the way he played. He's the best running back in football right now.
So just like what I was talking about with Devontae Adams, I love these small sample sizes. If you take the last 2 games from Dalvin Cook and find his 16-game pace, he is on pace for 2,952 yards and 48 total touchdowns.
Not bad.
He's pretty good at football. The guy just needs to stay healthy, needs to stay on the field, which is just something that we haven't seen on a consistent basis from him. And this is really a team that needs him in order to be successful. And I just think that it'll be a lot more difficult for him to have the success that he's had the last 2 weeks against this Chicago Bears defense. I guess it is a little bit of perfect timing for us to have some technical issues with Derek. It's going to wrap it up for this week's show. Again, you can follow me on Twitter at rstern33. Follow Derek at Derek Mountain. Backsportspage.com for all the great archives to the web shows and the great content going up. And at Backsports Page on all social medias. So until we meet again Sunday for Backsports Page Sunday Morning Fantasy, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you later.